Hello everybody and welcome back to the channel. Today we will be listening to the 10th part of What If Deku Became a Vigilante. If you enjoy, please consider liking, commenting, and subscribing down below, and don't forget to hit that bell icon so you get notified when videos go live. Now, without further ado, let's get into the video. Chapter 33, Is He a Hero? Musudafo Central Broadcasting at MPA Official. The vigilante Kitsune killed Stain in Hosu. Watch the news clip here. No milk for me at Bonebreaker 2047. Stain killed 17 heroes and maimed 23 others, and we're debating about Kitsune? Really? Slimy Bunny at Slime Bunny 405. There were 3 pros on the scene, 2 in the top 20. It was not necessary for him to step in, or for him to kill Stain. Professional herpetologist at Feed the Frogs. At Bonebreaker 2407, it's not about Stain, it's about the fact that no one can be an arbiter of justice. Everyone forgets that Stain started as a vigilante who went off the deep end. Simp first person second at Theater Girl. Okay, but that Luna arc? I would kill 2B in Kid's position. Slimy Bunny at Slime Bunny 405. Please take your simping somewhere else. Izuka groaned, curled up in bed and lay on his non-injured side. He never thought he would be thankful to Endeavor for anything, but the fire actually cauterized the gash on his side, so all he needed was burn cream and bandages. And in order to not do anything too strenuous until it's fully healed. Which he's going to ignore, but the sentiment was touching. Thank goodness Mitsuki took Eri for the week. He would have no idea how to keep this from his sister. He was exhausted, ignoring his phone blowing up. He didn't have the patience to try and pretend to be fine after everything. The only thing he had the energy to do was to email the school, pretending to be his uncle, informing the school that he was calling out sick. He knew he should respond to his friends calling him, the hero's texts, and probably check Twitter, but he didn't have the energy. Only part of that was because of his body's need to recuperate. The rest was grief. XX Water Girl XX at Swatter Girls. Okay, but is no one going to talk about how Endeavor was willing to kill Kitsune? Like everyone's talking about how Kitsune killed Stain, but Endeavor is the legal hero here. Double standards. XX Fireboy XX at Fiery Boys. Preach girl. Just a dude at Actual Hero 999. Okay, but Kitsune is more likely than Endeavor to turn villain. See, Stain. Number 1 Kitsune stan at United States of Smishorpus. Don't you dare treat my boy dirty like this, Kitsune would never turn villain. Why y'all so stupid at Speedredder? At Actual Hero 999. Okay, but there is precedent for legal heroes to switch and become villains. Like I see your point, but there's absolutely precedent there. Wild Squad of Dumbass, 11:26 p.m. Dumbass 2, Himi-chan, Daddy Issues, Dabby, Secretly British, Gentle Criminal, and Hacker Voice, Degree, La Brava, are online. Hacker Voice, Degree Foxy gets some rest. Hacker Voice, Degree will cover your patrols for the next few weeks. Dumbass 2, yeah. We got you. Daddy Issues, actually heal this time dumbass. Secretly British, if you ever need to talk, we're here for you. Musudafo Central Broadcasting at MPA Official. The Hosu investigation brings to light new information. Kitsune was a former apprentice of Stain. Watch the news clip here. Professional herpetologist at Feed the Frogs. Stain, vigilante-villain. Kitsune, vigilante-might turn villain. What I been saying this whole time. D's nuts at Mikirkis D's nuts. I feel like everyone's going insane, like did people forget that murder was bad? Are we sitting here debating the ethics of murder? Am I going crazy? Thomas the Thank Engine at Thomas the Thank Engine. Thanks. Hidaka Asuka at All Might's daughter-in-law. At Mikirkis D's nuts, but you've got to realize that this is not binary. The law allows for murder in self-defense, with the hero exception of murder in defense of civilians. D's nuts at Mikirkis D's nuts. I'm not taking legal advice from someone with the handle All Might's daughter-in-law. Willem William at William William. Coming from Twitter handle my quirk is D's nuts p. Izuku laid in bed, scrolling through Twitter. He was munching on an apple he summoned, since he had neither the energy nor the fucks to give to get out of bed and make something for him to eat. Musudafo Central Broadcasting at MPA Official. According to a note on Stain's body, he believes that the only true heroes are All Might and Kitsune. Watch the news clip here. He sucked in a breath, rereading the tweet to make sure he saw right. He switched from Twitter to Firefox, scrolling through several news sites, and every site said the same thing. The only true heroes are All Might and Kitsune. He rolled over, dropping his phone and burying his face into his pillow. Tears went down his face without his permission, as he tried to keep it together. It seems he's been doing a lot of that lately. Blood curdle pulsed in his chest, almost as if it sensed that he was thinking about its former owner. If he focused, he thought he felt the sensation of hands, gently holding his. "Count with me, Mikumo." He threw the pillow, flailing around for the vape he had on the nightstand. Grabbing it, he scrambled his way into sitting up, taking a hit and breathing as the sensations finally left him. Now that his head was clear, he could admit that the fact that these sensations from his quirks were getting worse. He didn't know whether that was because One for All was amplifying All for One or if it was because his mental state was down the fucking toilet, but he has no idea what to do about any of this. He just barely managed to remember to take the medication preventing his body from falling apart. He can't afford to be fighting hallucinations either. Dr. Needle's already trying to hike prices. When he jumps because the floor above him creaks, he knows he needs to get out of there or he'll lose his goddamn mind. He stumbles out of the room, ignoring the pain in his side that is telling him that this is a bad idea, and into his office. He hurriedly donned Kitsune's suit, smacked his face a couple of times, and jumped out the window. La Brava was totally gonna yell at him for this. Friendos 3, 12:03 a.m. Eraserdad, Eraserhead, Tsuki-kun, Tsukachi, McChicken, Hawks, and Jessica Rabbit, Midnight, are all online. Tsuki-kun, I have bad news. McChicken, I also have bad news. Jessica Rabbit, oh no. Tsuki-kun, the HPSC has raised the threat level of Kitsune, they put him on the villain scale. Jessica Rabbit, they what? McChicken, BC Kitsune killed an A-rank villain, they put him at a rank. Jessica Rabbit, the kid doesn't need this. Eraserdad, he is a minor. Eraserdad, a fucking child. McChicken, the comms put pressure on me to bring him in. McChicken, so I'm gonna have to stop talking to the kid. McChicken, they're getting SUS. Tsuki-kun, the only good thing is that they're not going to announce this to the public. Jessica Rabbit, yeah, the public would fucking riot. Eraserdad, I'm about to fucking riot. Jessica Rabbit, no. Tsuki-kun, please do not. McChicken left the chat. Jessica Rabbit, kid PLS respond if we're alright. Jessica Rabbit, we're worried about you. Actually Kitsune at Theria Kitsune. We will continue to post unsettling threats, in honor of Kitsune. This account stands by Kitsune, and we hope that people will continue to tweet I will boil your teeth at #Indahor even when he can't. Totally All Might at Real All Might. Dude, he deactivated his Twitter, he didn't fucking die. Now trending, #Indahor. Kitsune sat on his favorite ledge, overlooking the red light district. He is taking it easy, mostly for his friend's sake. It's not like crime made it hard for him, he would pop in an alley with a mugger, turn on his mask lights, and the criminal would go running and screaming, a quarter of the time the civilian would run too, which did not hurt. He had to have Shiryoni block his usual information gathering through the police networks, because most of it is how to catch Kitsune, and debates about whether he was a villain. Which he went out on patrol to escape Twitter, not to be reminded of it. Although it was nice to learn through the networks that he was apparently now in a rank villain. So that was fun. He felt the presence of Erasure behind him. Heya, Eraserdad. Problem child. The hero sat down next to him. You're supposed to be resting. He grinned at the familiar back and forth. This was easy, familiar. You know me. Kitsune and Rest don't exactly get along. Sure, and this has nothing to do with yesterday. His grip minutely tightened on the ledge, and he prepared to flee if he needed to. Speaking of which, how are the hero brats? They're both fine, recovering in a hospital, which is what you should be doing. Eraserhead leveled a dad glare at him. You sustained the worst injuries, brat. Nah, I'm pretty sure that Numu had it worse than I did. Kid, you've got to stop using humor to deflect. What I'm hearing is you think I'm funny dash. Kitsune, listen to me, Eraserhead cut him off. You don't have to pretend you're not hurting. Even after all this time, when he's backed into a corner, he lashes out. It looks really bad to sympathize with a villain. Kid, you're not Dash. It's fine, really, he lied through his fucking teeth. It's not the first time I've been called that. A villain. Something like that. The hero frowned, concern and worry on his face, and he hated that look, especially directed at him. Look, if you come with me, we can get you the help you need, and we can protect you from the commission. You don't deserve to be labeled a villain. He closed his eyes against the tears welling in his eyes. If you knew everything, you'd be agreeing with them. He shifted forwards, preparing himself to launch himself off and run. Goodbye, Eraserhead. Kid Dash. Kitsune let himself fall, snapping a bracer forwards and pulling himself away from one of the closest people to a father he, still, had. He tried to convince himself that shutting him out now would keep him from feeling betrayed when Eraser, Dad, had turned on them like everyone else. He shut down the pain of pushing everyone away. Monsters don't feel pain. Friendos 3:12 a.m. God's mistake, Kitsune, left the chat. Chapter 34, Wild Week, right? Stain was all anyone was talking about. Stain this, Stain that, was Stain right, was Kitsune right, was Endeavor right? The press release from Endeavor's agency basically saying that he was right to try and torch both Stain and Kitsune because they were both villains only fueled the flames of the conversation. Katsuki just wished the extras would shut up about it. He didn't want to remember Hosu, and he was sure that Four Eyes and Icy Hot and Round Cheeks didn't want to remember either. Sometimes he thought the images of dead and mangled civilians would be burned into the back of his eyelids forever. Kami, he's gonna need to ask the old hag to schedule an appointment with the shrink. He had snapped at Pikachu when he initially brought up Stain, and since then the self-proclaimed Baku Squad hadn't brought it up. He didn't even yell at them for bringing up the Lion vs Pokemon argument again. It was really a testament to his patience around these idiots. So, you interned with Endeavor? Pikachu asked, poking him in the shoulder. What cha do to him? Now fucking with the dumpster fire he could talk about for ages. So he proudly told them the story about how he moved all the furniture in the dumpster fire's office an inch to the left. Okako was lying on her desk, quietly looking out the window. Aitsu was sitting next to her, writing something down in his notebook, although she could tell he wasn't very enthused about it. On the other side of him was Todoroki, quietly doing some sort of breathing exercise. She was pulled out of her stupor by a pack of choco cats being set in front of her face. When she sat up, she saw that Shinsu was putting packs on Aitsu's and Todoroki's desks too. He slid a chair over, opening his own bag and popping one into his mouth. I'm not gonna start talking about it, he said with his mouth full, referring to the elephant in the room. I just wanted to ask if you guys were okay. I'm doing better, Aitsu said. I had a talk with my brother, and it helped. Okako shrugged, popping one of the cookies in her mouth. Could be better, could be worse. Todoroki was quiet, still kind of staring at the cookies. Shinsu shrugged. Well, I'll listen, if you guys ever want to talk. She smiled at him, tired but genuine. Thank you. This time, when she laid back down on the desk, she didn't feel like her and her friends were in a depressive aura, but that her and her friends were simply basking in each other's presences, sharing some cookies. Izuku tried to focus on his katsudon, ignoring the buzzing all around him. All he heard on the train to school was about Kitsune and Stain. All his classmates gossiping was about Kitsune and Stain. Even without being on Twitter, all of social media was about Kitsune and Stain. Sometimes he felt all of the pressure was slowly crushing him. The plus side was that his friends weren't talking about it. The downside is that his friends weren't talking about anything, so they were awkwardly sitting there in silence. There wasn't even the cuteness of Eri to distract them all, as she was having lunch with Kurana-sensei. Hell, at that point, he was tempted to join in the conversation about whether the ocean was a soup. Hatsum plopped her tray down, sitting down with a huff. Alright, this is depressing. Let's talk about how we're feeling like civilized people. What the fuck are we gonna do, go around in a circle and talk about our feelings like it's kindergarten? Shinsu asked. Izuku could feel the sarcasm oozing from his sentence. If that's what it takes for you guys to stop being sad, then yes. Everyone looked at each other, trying to figure out who would go first. Surprisingly, it was Yurika who spoke up first. I guess I'm still thinking about what happened. I just can't stop seeing it. People are calling it a victory when we were barely surviving. Like the USJ went unspoken. If I've learned anything, Izuku spoke up, hesitantly. Survival itself is a victory. Todoroki seemed to wince, while Shinsu nodded in understanding. That was something Izuku tried to impress early on in their rapid-fire sports festival training. There was no such thing as honor or dishonor, there was just what keeps you alive and what doesn't. It was probably reinforced in his internship with Eraserhead, they shared similar views. Izuku shook that thought away. Eraserhead and him were on opposite sides now. You can't help anyone if you're dead, Shinsu said. They lapsed again into silence. It seemed to always come back to silence lately. Young Midoriya. A word, please. Izuku stopped, turning back to see Yagi waving to him from his office. Kaken, I'll meet you and Eri at Auntie's. The boy in question raised an eyebrow. Are you sure? He nodded, so Kaken turned to pick Eri up and put her on his hip. Alright, guess it's just gonna be you and me for a bit, unicorn. Once he waved goodbye to Eri, he turned back to Yagi, following him into his office. When they were inside, he sat down next to his mentor on the couch. I know I've been busy these last few days, but I wanted to check in with you, Yagi said. I know we were both banking on the sports festival to get you into the hero course. So that's what this was about. Later he would blame his lack of sleep for what came out of his mouth next, for what he allowed to speak next. I think you should pick someone else. My boy, what are you dash? I failed. Izuku knew he wasn't talking about the sports festival. When he closed his eyes, trying to press tears away, Stain's body was burned into his eyelids. I failed. I don't deserve it. You should give one for all to someone better. He gasped when he felt himself being pulled, tucked against Yagi's side, being cradled like he was fragile, being given comfort like he deserved it. You didn't fail, Midoriya. The commission purposefully kept you from heroics. This was just a setback. Your heart and mind are truly heroic, and you deserve to have one for all. You're a worthy successor, and you will become an amazing hero, no matter what anyone else says. I'm not going to give up on you, Midoriya. You shouldn't give up on yourself either. Izuku finally broke. He let himself lean into the comfort offered, let himself feel every emotion he tried to keep locked away, as he sobbed into his mentor's shirt. He felt Yagi tighten his grip, almost as if his mentor was afraid to let him go. In what felt like hours later, but was realistically only a few minutes, he finally ran out of tears to shed. And surprisingly, he felt better, like a bit of a weight was lifted off his shoulders. Do you feel better, my boy? Izuku nodded, wiping his face with his sleeve. Thanks, Yagi-san. Of course, although I'd like to ask you something. Izuku looked up to meet his mentor's eyes. If you ever feel like you aren't worthy, or are doubting yourself, or need anything at all, please come talk to me. I want to help, and I promise that you won't be bothering me. I will. Yagi smiled, holding up his pinky. Pinky promise. Izuku smiled back, hooking his pinky with Yagi's. Pinky promise. He knelt at Stain's grave, laying a bouquet of zinnias at the base of the headstone. He was wearing an oversized hoodie, cargo pants, and a black mask, because he didn't want to risk getting caught as Kitsune or Midoriya. Stain had to be stopped, but he didn't have to die. He went off the deep end and was slaughtering heroes, but he saved him, trained him, and practically raised him. He was glad that Stain's reign of terror was over, and he was grieving Stendhal. Fittingly, it was raining. He heard footsteps coming up behind him, and didn't move as he saw a bouquet of lavenders placed at the grave. Are you also a follower of Stain? In a way, he responded, pulling his hood up further. I wish to carry on Stain's legacy. The man behind him declared. I will purge this world of false heroes. Are you sure? The man faltered. What? Stain was so obsessed with his beliefs that he isolated himself and pushed away everyone important to him. His view of morality was so narrow that only perfection was white, and everything else was black. Before you try and take on the mantle of Stain, you have to ask yourself what your morals are, and if you're willing to cast them aside for the sake of Stain's cause. Kitsune. He stood up, turning to face the man behind him. He recognized him from patrols through the red light district. Killing is not a decision to be taken lightly. I watched as my mentor went insane, and I don't want to watch it happen to anyone else. He walked away from the grave and out of the cemetery. Miraculously, he felt a little bit lighter. He needed the closure, and clearly Spinner needed the help. Chapter 35, Eri's 5-step plan to cheer up Izunaya-kan. Eri was very observant. She knew that people underestimate her, because she was a child. But she paid attention to everything around her. She knew more than most people think. She knew that Overhaul was hurting her, that he did something to her grandfather. When she first spotted Izunaya-kan, she knew that he would be the one to save her, and paid attention to the guards talking about an annoying little vermin. She knew that when Izunaya-kan took her in, he had to sacrifice a lot to take care of her. She knew that Overhaul was still alive, and she knew that something else was chasing Izunaya-kan too. Most importantly, she saw that her brother was happier at UA. Eri was very observant. So she noticed very quickly that Izunaya-kan wasn't feeling well. It started after the sports festival, when her brother explained that he wasn't transferring into the hero course yet. Then he sent her to stay at Auntie Mitsuki's for the week, which only happened when Izunaya-kan was doing something related to his job. She didn't understand what people talked about or who Kitsune or Stain were, but what she did understand was that it made Izunaya-kan and his friends sad. So she came up with an easy 5-step plan to cheer up her brother. Step 1, find a puppy. Izunaya-kan and his friends were at Mama-kan's house for another study group. The first study group, with the entirety of Class 1A and her brother, was really fun. Eri had a lot of fun at Mama-kan's house, but this time she stayed with Auntie Mitsuki and Uncle Masaru, because the study group was the perfect distraction. Auntie Mitsuki was working, so Uncle Masaru was the one who went to the park with her. More specifically, she ran ahead, keeping her eyes peeled for a puppy. She knew they couldn't afford the fees for adoption, and Izunaya-kan has talked about the number of stray dogs and cats on the streets. He talked fondly about how, when he lived on the streets, he would pet and snuggle with various stray cats and dogs, so she figured that she should find a stray for him. Eri grinned as she saw a bush wiggle. She ran towards the bush, eagerly giggling as she caught sight of a tanuki. She grabbed the tanuki around the torso, lifting it up with difficulty. She read in a book somewhere that tanuki were a kind of dog, and tanuki was close enough to a puppy. Uncle Masaru. Uncle Masaru. Look what I found. She ran back to her uncle, the tanuki sitting politely in her arms. I found a tanuki. Eri, please put it down, her uncle said nervously. That's not a tanuki. That's a raccoon. She employed her best puppy dog eyes, holding the tanuki in her arms. Can I keep it? Please. Her uncle folded. She knew he would. Step 2, bring the puppy to the vet. Sir, are you aware that that's a raccoon? Her uncle sighed, cleaning his glasses. I'm aware. Can you please look it over? Maybe check if it has a quirk? Any diseases? Sir, we can't accept dash. Her uncle was folding, so Eri was going to have to step up. She walked up to the counter, where the tanuki was sitting, and she crossed her arms, channeling her inner Auntie Mitsuki. I demand you look over my tanuki, and I will not take no for an answer. The vet behind the counter paled. Of course, we'll just, take her back then. Step 3, channel her inner Auntie Mitsuki to get the vet to look over the puppy. So far her plan was a success. So the raccoon has a full bill of health, the vet said, with significantly more bandages on him. She's a bit overweight, but that could be helped with a diet. She does have a quirk, which is probably why she is so mellow around Eri. The tanuki, who she learned is a girl, was sitting in her lap. She was petting her fur, which was now glossy and clean. So, thank you for bringing her in, but we are going to have to bring her to a specialized zoo. I understand. Eri glared at her uncle. I'm sorry, but you cannot keep a raccoon, even if she has a quirk. Especially if she has a quirk. As her uncle and the vet started chatting, Eri put the skills she learned from Izunaya-kan to the test. She crept her hand into Uncle Masaru's pocket, pulling out his phone. She tapped her way through his contacts while the adults were talking, calling her aunt. Masaru, what the fuck? You know I'm working, you better be fucking dying dash. Hi auntie. Oh, hi sweetheart. Her tone changed immediately. She looked up to see her Uncle Masaru making gestures to get her to stop talking, and the vet slowly backing away with his hands up. What's going on, sweetie? Uncle Masaru isn't letting me keep my puppy. Masaru. Dear, the puppy in question is a raccoon with a quirk. She cannot keep dash. I mean we keep Katsuki. Katsuki is our son dash. Is the raccoon hurting Eri? No, she's been very nice. Eri interjected, giving her a few pats on her head just to prove her point. I'm pretty sure the raccoon scratched up the vet. Well, if it's not hurting Eri, why not? Dear dash. Ma'am, the vet spoke up. The best place to take the raccoon would be a specialized zoo. The room was silent. Then Auntie Mitsuki spoke up. Sweetie, please cover your ears. Eri obeyed her aunt, covering her ears with her hands as she started shouting at both of the adults. She kept a grin on her face. She knew her auntie would win. Step 4, get the puppy a collar and a name. Auntie Mitsuki won. Eri picked out a pretty collar, covered in purple glitter, and picked out a tag shaped like a fox. The vets let her pick out her name while her uncle filled out all the paperwork. Missy. She watched as the vets etched the name, quirk, and phone number onto the tag, hooking it onto the collar, and then gave the collar to her to put on Missy. Apparently they didn't want to risk ending up like the other vet. Which was ridiculous. Missy was very nice and well behaved. For example, she sat very still as Eri put the collar around her neck. She picked up Missy, holding the tanuki close to her chest. Once her uncle handed back the paperwork, she tugged on his sleeve. Uncle Masaru, can I go visit Izunaya-ken and Kiken? I wanna show them Missy. Her uncle sighed, but nodded, and she held her new friend close with a smile. It was time for the final step. Step 5, show Izunaya-ken the puppy. Being here was weird. Izuku was keenly aware of the fact that he was out of place in the fancy mansion. Everything felt so clean and rich, and he felt like he was making everything dirty simply due to his presence. On the plus side, he's not the only one feeling uncomfortable. Kiken definitely was, as well as Shinsu and Yurika. Of course, the legacy kids were comfortable, and they told him that they'd been there multiple times for parties or balls with Yayorozu's family. Izuku chewed on the end of his pencil, trying to focus on the worksheet in front of him. His skin still crawled around his friends, he felt like an imposter in his own body. Midoriya-kun. Yayorozu asked, getting his attention from his spiraling thoughts. Do you want some tea? He smiled, nodding politely as she poured him a cup. He wasn't stupid, his friends were studious and they certainly didn't need a study group, especially with just them and not with the rest of the class. He had a feeling that Yayorozu just invited them over so that she could try and get them to feel better. Miss Yayorozu, a butler walked into the room. There are visitors for you and your guests. She smiled, standing up straight. Please, let them in. Izuku zoned out a little as he tried to focus back on the worksheet. He tried to get his brain to focus on the numbers, tried to get his brain to crunch and calculate, but it was moving at the pace of a snail. It took an embarrassingly long amount of time to get to the answer. If everything was normal he would have been able to do it faster. Izunaya-kan. His head snapped up, as he looked over to see his sister and Uncle Masaru walking in. He went from surprised to confused when he saw that Eri was holding a collared raccoon in her arms. Hello sunshine, he said, ignoring his friend's sputtering in surprise behind him. What do you have there? She beamed, running up to him. I found a tanuki. Uncle Masaru and the vet called her a raccoon, but that's very rude, because she's clearly a tanuki. When she was smiling that wide, Izuku didn't have the heart to correct her. He saw Itza about to do so and glared at him, reaching out to scratch the raccoon under the chin. What's her name, Eri Bunny? Missy. Eri giggled, plopping down on Izuku's lap. She has a quirk. They wouldn't let me keep her at first, but I called Auntie Mitsuki and she let me keep her. What's her name, again? Yurika asked, leaning over. I didn't hear it. Izuku pretended that she wasn't asking because Kiken was adjusting his hearing aids and didn't hear it. Missy. Kiken nodded. Of course. Short for missile launcher. Kiken, no. Izuku laid on the couch, a documentary on animals playing while Eri doodled in a notebook. It was a normal evening, only this time Missy was laying on his stomach. She had a soothing quirk, where anyone who pet her fur would be soothed and calmed. He didn't know why she had attached herself to Eri or Izuku specifically, but he would not look a gift horse in the mouth. Missy was very calm and let Izuku's friends pet her, but snarled at every adult. In fact, Uncle Masaru laughed, albeit nervously, as he described how the vet was covered in bandages when they finally came back from the checkup. Izuku couldn't say why Missy had come to them, but as he relaxed when he pet her fur, he could say that he was glad Missy came into their lives. Alright, that's where we'll leave off for the day. Thanks so much for listening along with me today. If you enjoyed, please like and comment down below. It really helps with the algorithms. I look forward to seeing you next time. Ciao for now, lovelies.